actually live because Zoom on the here says it's not, but I think we are live. Hello everyone, this is Office Hours. If you don't know what Office Hours is, that's totally fine, no worries. It is, yeah, there we go, we are live, good. So let me share my screen here. And there we go. So kcd.im/office hours. That's what this is. That's what we're doing right now. This is your chance to ask me questions. And I've got several queued up that I know people are waiting for. So I'm going to get started on some of the, at least one that I know of. And then I will open it up to whoever's here in the Zoom chat. You can get to that from the Office Hours page. And all the links that I share is part of these answers and stuff. They're all going in Discord in the Office Hours channel. So if you're not on Discord yet, I strongly advise that you jump on because it's a good time. We have fun. It's a bunch of people in here. Yeah, so let's get started with the first question. Let me move this over. Oh, look at that. Epic React logged in. That's whoops. Oopsies. Okay, so yeah, Tiger asked this yesterday. He said he wanted to know about my interview process at PayPal because he has been listening to the podcast, which is public, by the way. You can go listen to the podcast. It's kind of great. But yeah, I wanted to know about my interview process at PayPal. Did I get into PayPal 6 months after graduating, etc. So no, actually, my first job was at Domo. I was there as an intern when I was in school, and then I went on to convert to full-time when I graduated. 2 months after, or 4 months after graduating, I moved on to another company called AtTask. Now it's called Workfront. And I was there for 2 months before I was sniped over to another company called Alianza. And I loved Alianza. It was awesome. But I decided to move on from that to PayPal a year later. So it was about a year and 4 months from graduation to going to work at PayPal. So that was that. The interview process was actually really similar to the interview process at Facebook, if that's interesting to you. It was very practical, like surprisingly practical. So I had 4 individual interviews during that day. Well, okay, so first you have the phone screening, and at Facebook it was just a recruiter that asked me these questions, and then at PayPal, I think it was some engineers. LinkedIn also had a phone screening that was just engineers asking some questions. But then for PayPal, I did a take-home thing. I didn't do a take-home for anybody else. Well, actually, no. I did a take-home for InStructure as well. They had a take-home. Yeah. And so that was just like a build this little app in a couple hours or whatever. And then when I finished with that, they invited me on site. They flew me in, took care of me, and then on my on-site interview, I had 4 individual interviews: 2 in the morning, and then a lunch with the director, and then 2 in the afternoon. And very practical stuff. They asked me about okay, so here's our a typical scenario that we run into in building our UIs. How would you solve this problem? Some higher level architectural things, and then here's a computer, help me debug this problem or whatever. So yeah, it was pretty fun, kind of cool, and I passed, so that's good. Okay, cool. So Michal is asking about this issue that he's having with React Router and testing. And I'm not going to trust Code Sandbox at all. So often it does not work for me. So I'm just going to download that right off the bat. And yeah, let's get out of this. We'll do some more on that later. Let me get some of this. We'll go to the desktop and cd into the test different route calls, and we'll get those dependencies getting installed. And here we've got this. We've got our routes. We've got the routes test. And here we go. Render routes. We got the browser router. And oh, okay, that's okay. So we've got a nested route thing. Let me make sure that we're using. Did I make a change? Yeah. Make sure that we're using the version of React Router. Yeah, okay, so we've got React Router DOM version 5. So I haven't actually used version 5 in a long time. I've been doing version 6 beta for months. So we'll see how this goes. Okay, cool. Now we'll allow that. We've got our stuff installed. Let's pull up the tests. And bum-ba-dum, it's busted. Okay. Oh, well, that's one thing, I suppose. Let's go ahead and make sure we've got just DOM installed. Set up test.js, import that. Let's try that again. Cool, it's passing. So Michal, was that supposed to fail? Because it is passing.
No, that's supposed to pass.
Okay.
But I've added the second part. I commented it out.
Oh, okay. Very good. There we go. Okay, so this is what you're
So
running around. So I see. So what the problem that you're facing is you do something on this page, and then you want to navigate from that page to this other page. Just in your test, you want the test to navigate from this page to the other page and show something that happened maybe in the database that as a result of the thing that you did. Is that right?
yeah, correct.
That
But in
makes
this
sense.
case, it's just static. But I don't think it should care about it.
Right. Yeah, that should be irrelevant. So what you're saying is,
For
hey,
me, it's like I'm from page 1 to page 2, and I need to see some other things on page 2, and that's what I'm testing in this small use case.
gotcha. So the problem here is that you're calling push state and the router isn't updating based on window history push state.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we could dive into this. I'm not sure of the answer right off the top of my head, but we could dive into this. One thing, just in case our dive doesn't yield fruit, one thing that that you might consider doing, probably not the end all solution, but what works in my test when I'm working through this is clicking on links that are rendered by the router. If I click on those links, then things work fine. And so what if we brought in link from React Router DOM, and then inside of here, say div and link to products 1 and go to product 1. And then here we say user event click. Do we have a user event in here? Yeah, let's grab user event. Oops. User event from testing library, user event. And so then we'll click on screen, get by text, go to product 1. And
Yeah,
I would
would
expect that this would
work,
work.
but in my case, it's like I just want to test the route component, because otherwise I have like the whole app with a lot of providers. I need to mock or mock some database stuff and so on.
Yeah, it's a
So
lot
I
of work.
really want
Yeah.
to, yeah, I really want to focus on the routes thing, and so this is like the minimal thing to, yeah, test the routes, and it's like actually working, except for the second yeah, route change, then yeah, it fails.
Right. Yeah.
That's a bit of a bummer.
Yeah, it makes sense. So this would work as a workaround if we can't figure out how to actually make it work so that you can just call go to route. And like even with what you're saying, what you want to try and do, you could still render a link within what you're rendering. So like maybe I'm not sure what your custom render looks like, but I'm guessing that you can provide some UI. Like or at least just make it so that you can, so that you could include any links that you want to for routes that you want to navigate to, and then you can use user event to click on those. So this would be a workaround. This isn't the solution, but this would be a workaround if this doesn't pan out. So with that in mind, let's see if we can dive in. I'm not going to be able to spend too much time on this because I see Mandy is here and she had a question, and there are a couple other folks that I know have some questions. But let's dig into this just a little bit and see if we can't figure out how to make this work the way that you wanted it to. Yeah, right there. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I think it'd be really useful to set up a debugger so I can step through what's going on when push state is called. And actually, what I'd really like to check on is what happens when I click on a link. And let's see, because I would expect
Yeah,
that. Sorry, go ahead.
what I also noticed is like if you switch the render and the go to route inside of the render nodes from place, so you do the go to route after you do the render,
Mm-hmm.
then the first part also fails.
Yeah, yeah. So my guess here is that there's some sort of disconnect between this browser router and this window history push state, which actually makes me wonder whether that is the same, whether it's the same thing in the browser, like actually in the browser. So here I can go between list and finished, and if I say window location push, hold on a second. Oh, history, sorry, that makes sense. History, push state, and data is nothing. The title is the React bookshelf, whoops. And then the URL I wanna go to is list, see what happens. Yeah, see, you're not gonna get this to work, not this way. For some reason, React doesn't care about window history push state. So, I'm glad that I tried this first. This will never work, like whether it's tests or in a real browser. So I wonder then, what is the mechanism that React Router hooks up into things? And I know that they have their own history, but I would expect that they would listen to push state events or push events or whatever
That's
you'd
what
call
I
those.
was thinking too. And
Yes.
I know there's like the history package, but I don't want to use it because yeah, I'm only using React Router DOM, and otherwise I need to include the history package out of nowhere and nobody knows about it. And so yeah, it's like an implementation detail of React Router DOM, right? So
Indeed,
I
it
don't
is.
care about that.
Yeah. So honestly, um, the thing is that window history push state is also an implementation detail. So your test is doing something that users wouldn't do. What a user would do is they do like a full page refresh, right? If they wanted to go straight from one URL to another, they might edit the URL. And if I were to edit the URL here, so I'm on the list page and I wanted to say, hey, I want to go to the finished books, but I don't want to click on a link, then I'll type in finished, and that's going to do a full page refresh on me. And so if you wanted to simulate that kind of experience, which I don't think you do, but if you did, then what you would actually do is like do whatever you're doing in here. And then instead of go to route, you would actually re-render your whole app. So you'd say render routes after saying go to route. This actually might work. I wonder, maybe. I wouldn't be,
You have to
yeah.
delete the go to
Oh,
route
right, yeah.
inside
So
of the render routes then.
we'd have to render it to the same container. So you'd keep track of that container. And you can make this work. I'm pretty just for the fun of it, let's do it. Let's make this work. So we're going to get our container, and then let's take the rest of those and pass that. Oh, actually, there we go. We'll call this options. Okay, and then for this one, we'll say container. I think this will work actually. So this will basically trigger a re-render onto that same thing. Maybe is it base element? I think it's actually base element. I never use this API, and nobody else should either.
You have to delete the go-to route inside of the render routes too.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Yeah.
So actually what we could do instead of that, thank you. You said that and I ignored you, so sorry about that.
No problem.
There we go. So that should do it. Maybe, yeah. So that passes. So if you wanted to simulate that type of experience, like I said, I don't think that's what you want, but if you wanted to, then this actually works out okay. So then I had another idea of something to suggest. So keep in mind, like the way that this was structured already was technically implementation detail, because the user themselves does not call window history push state, and so that's already sort of implementation detail. I like to use it to get me on that page, and I see that as kind of like the user lands on the page, and then from there they're all just navigating and stuff. So I don't know, I said a lot of words. I feel like I've missed something else, but does that sort of help a little bit?
Yeah, I think I understand a bit what you're like saying.
So I think there's a way to get the history that the browser router is using and use that to navigate if you wanted to. I'm not sure if you want to, but I think there's a way to do that. Yeah, I don't know if you'd want to do that. I think so. Let me just take a step back and say, if I were facing this same kind of a problem, I think what I would do is I would render, in addition to my regular UI, like in your real app, you probably have a custom render function that you can provide your UI to, and then that is going to be rendered within the router and all context providers, like we document on testing library. If you're not doing that, then maybe try doing that. It's a good idea. So what I would do then is I'd say we're going to render that UI, but we're also going to render that inside of a fragment with a link, and have a link for every link that you want to have the user just go directly to. That might be one way I would do that. Having it do a re-render to having it do a re-render after you update the URL is also potentially a solution there too. But it appears that there's no way to say to update the URL and have React Router react to that. So yeah.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I think I'll go with the extra link component then. I think it's more like the preferred way of how the rest of the team wants to have it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Sorry that I can't be much more help. I think this is a fine mechanism, and I wonder if there's something you could do to make this work. I mean, technically there should be. It would basically be a call to re-render, or something. Anyway, I'm sure you could figure something out. You're a smart dude. But yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the help.
Yeah, interesting. I learned something, so thank you for sharing that. All right, Mandy's here. Mandy, you had a question on Twitter, and I don't have it in front of me. Do you want to ask it here really quick?
Yeah, thank you. The company that I work for, we are looking at revamping our styling library. Right now, we're using kind of a mix smush of different components, style components, we've got some bootstrap in there. So we want to really revamp everything. And so we have until next week for everybody to do their research and decide what they want to use. And I wanted to ask your opinions on what libraries you think work best with React. I'm kind of a minimalist. I actually like styled components and kind of creating things on your own, but there are a lot of people that don't, that like that out of the box feel, and it's really easy, and you know, they can just focus on the coding part and not the styling necessarily. So your thoughts on that, and how I can do the research on it so that we can come up with a solution for our team that works the best.
Yeah, that's a great question. If you don't mind, I'll just ask a couple clarifying questions. So, so you're kind of looking for something like styled components, so you can build your own kind of component library. And some of your team is they're looking for things like Material UI or Chakra UI or something like that. That's more like pre-built that they can just build into their thing.
Yes, right now the ones we're considering are Tailwind and Material UI.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. So are you talking about Tailwind, the framework, or Tailwind UI, the like set of components?
Ideally, I would love UI, but I think we're looking at Tailwind CSS.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So I've heard great things about Tailwind. Epic React, actually, epicreact.dev uses Tailwind, the app itself. I don't use Tailwind in the course or in any of the workshops or anything, but it does use Tailwind, and the engineers who are working on it seem to really like it. And I've just heard wonderful things about Tailwind. I did use Tailwind a little bit, and I think I live streamed some of it. So somewhere back in YouTube history, back in probably March sometime, you can see me experimenting with Tailwind. I ran into some problems with Tailwind on like one-off things. Like I just had quite a few places where I was like, there's nothing really in Tailwind for this situation. So I guess I'm just going to do my regular emotion inline CSS prop stuff here. And if I have that, then like, why am I bringing all of Tailwind in addition, right? It's like, so I just want to do one solution. So I decided against using Tailwind, but people find it to be really great. I am not a big fan of pre-baked, big styled component libraries, especially when we're building a product we're trying to differentiate ourselves. I don't want to use like a date picker from this thing and a accordion from this thing, and like you start patching all these things together, and often the component libraries are like they have ways that you can style them to suit your own style, but I find that the APIs for doing so are kind of tricky, and it's hard to suit your needs, I guess. So yeah, I have never built an actual product using like a full-on component library other than something like Reach UI, which is they're basically components with a minimal amount of styling. It only has styles for reasons for accessibility. Like outside of that, there's nothing styled for you. And so that allows you to style it your own way, whether you're using CSS and JS or regular CSS style sheets. That's up to you. But Reach UI is awesome. I really, really am happy with the components they have. They don't have everything, and so I do have to build my own things of some for different experiences. But yeah, that's great. So anyway, as far as the styling stuff goes, when I was at PayPal, I was building the component library there. That was the last thing that I was working on. And what we ended up doing was we had a team that was responsible for creating a bunch of style sheets for for our component or the implementation of our design system. And then I built a React component library that was based on those style sheets. And that worked out really well. And then the users of the component library would use emotion, which is very similar to styled components. So if you're happy with styled components, that's great. I like emotion better, but they're really very similar at this point. So it doesn't, you use whatever you want. But in the applications, they would consume the components. And then for any one-off styles they needed, they would just use emotion. And that worked out really nicely. So to sum it all up, component libraries, I think that regular style sheets is the way to go. For applications, I suggest using CSS and JS. And then bringing in component libraries where the API makes sense for what you're trying to do, and you can style them appropriately. And yeah, I mean, if it satisfies your use case, then that saves you some time. But if it doesn't, then just build it yourself.
I tend to agree, and unfortunately, I feel like the trend is more towards let's pull in all the different styling libraries we can, and what it does is it just bloats the whole code base, and it makes it really heavy. And you
Yes.
end up importing a lot of things that you just don't need and you never use. And then I find like with Material UI, it was supposed to be a wonderful experience, but actually like tweaking it to the point where I was happy with it was more work than if I had just started out from scratch with CSS.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it really. The styling aspect of components libraries is notoriously difficult. The challenge is like I've built enough of those types of components to know that it's always a lot more work than you think it's going to be to build the component. But it's the styling portion that is always so frustrating because you're like, you're almost perfect except for this one thing, which is why I tend to really like the more headless UI type of libraries. Like Downshift is the library that I created for autocomplete and drop downs and that sort of UI. And it doesn't render any React elements. And now it's actually just hooks. And so those are the types of component libraries that I really like that aren't actually components or are using compound components. And those are the patterns that I teach in Epic React as well, how to make abstractions like that so that you can give the developer users the flexibility that they're looking for. So yeah, I can relate to those struggles you're talking about.
thank you so much. I would encourage you to write a blog post, and I'm excited about Epic React, but just on the beauty of simplicity and maybe like your recommendations for simple resources for styling, that would be helpful. I know there's a huge need for that.
Yeah, you're right. I think on the styling aspect of it, I'm really impressed by, I admire there are a bunch of other people that I admire and look up to that you might ask. So Chantastic on Twitter, it's Michael Chan. He's just awesome, fantastic, I'd even say. And so he is a big proponent of standards, and especially with modern day CSS, you have CSS variables and custom properties. And I don't even know what custom properties are, but he says like you don't need CSS and JS with these new standards, which I think is great. If you can avoid shipping a CSS and JS runtime and still have the developer experience that I enjoy from that, then that's fantastic. So I would be really interested to hear what he has to say about that, or at least see what that would look like, because I still haven't investigated too much into that. And then also Mark Diglesh, he is awesome, has really good ideas around styling and React. And so he'd be another one to ask about. I'd love to have both of them write a blog post about this sort of thing. So
Thank you. I will reach out to them.
yeah, sure. And if they share anything, I'd love to hear what they have to say. So you can CC me if you want. I'd love to just be a fly on that wall. Thanks, Mandy. All right. Anyone else have questions or anything at all? Actually, I'll look in the Discord here, but if anybody has questions in the Zoom, then you can just unmute yourself and let me know. I will share my screen. Okay, cool. And by the way, people in the Zoom have priority over people chatting in Discord. So you can interrupt me as I'm looking through these questions. Ben, did you have something?
Yeah, it's just a question that I'm just curious about. How often is it useful in JSX to have types other than strings like you have in HTML? Like how much is another language, another platform such as Angular that doesn't use JSX losing by not having attributes be able to be of any type that JavaScript supports?
Gotcha. Yeah. That's a good question. So the biggest advantage of JSX over a template, like Angular, is that it's JSX compiles directly to reasonable JavaScript. And so what that means is that you're able to pass actual values without having to learn the syntax for doing that. So let me clarify that. You do have to learn syntax for JSX, but it's really minimal and it converts directly to JavaScript function calls. And so there's a lot less magic involved in that, which I tend to really appreciate. That was one of the things that I really love about moving from AngularJS to React, was not having to worry about what the compiler is doing to my template. So yeah, how much are other frameworks losing? I mean, they make up for it by having an advanced compiler that creates the components and says, oh, okay, so this thing was on your, like, within your controller, this was exported by your component or whatever. And so I can take that object and just pass it on to this component. So they make up for it. And so they're not really losing anything, like capabilities wise. But I think that it is more obvious because I can see it's easier for me to translate JSX to React and React to JSX. I don't have to say, okay, well, now export this thing so I can use it in my template. It's a function, or it's a variable that I just reference in my JavaScript. So that's the most or the biggest thing for me, is that I'm just using regular JavaScript. So.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Sure. Cool. And some people like the template thing, but I do not. I'm so happy to be gone, to have moved on from the template thing. Okay, cool. So Nick is asking me a question. Also looking forward to Epic React. Me too. Big time. I can't wait. I've been waiting forever. Okay, in another office hours, I was talking about not syncing contact. I remember seeing this earlier. I didn't dive in too deep, but syncing context and local state for form text input, and to make the input unmanaged and just use a default value. Yep. What if you need to access the text input local value before submitting the form for disabling a button, for example? Great question. Yes, this is a great question. I wish that, yeah, when people ask questions with code, it's way better if we can get a code sandbox so that I can demonstrate something. So I'll try to make a code sandbox here really quick. Let me fork this thing. Okay. And here we're using, yeah, so we'll use the context state. We're just going to say context name. Okay, there we go. Okay, so what we're trying to do is I need to be able to have this is disabled value based off of the local value of our input. Okay, so yeah, I wish that I had access to my finished version and where I answered the question, because that I feel like I'm probably missing something that I said there that I want to clarify here. But anyway, what we have is, yeah, we're initializing the local name based on the context value. And what the original question was how do I update this local name if that context value changed, right? So now we're synchronizing our local state with the context state. And that's what we want to avoid. Synchronizing state, bad idea. You wind up in state synchronization issues, like problems where things are out of date. And so it's actually not too difficult to deal with. You just have a side effect that runs when the context value changes, and then you call set state. But then you're triggering an additional render every single time that context value changes as well, which is not optimal. And yeah, it's just more to think about. So if you can avoid that, that's good. So let's say right here, the idea for this specific use case is it should be disabled if it is unchanged. Now I feel like there's actually, an API for this, like a DOM API. Let me try this out really quick. So we grab the input I feel like I've looked for this before, and I was disappointed to find that it was an Angular thing. But, but let's see. DOM input is dirty. I think that's what it was in Angular. Dirty. Here's the specification. Each input element has a Boolean dirty value flag. The dirty value flag must be initially set to false when the element is created. So here we can say dirty. Yeah, this isn't up to spec. Okay, okay, maybe not. Let's move on from that direction or that train of thought. So, for this specific situation, you just want to have it not be enabled unless the user's made a change, right? And so what we can do is we can say change made, set change made, equals React use state. And then on our form, we say on change, set change made to true. And then here we can say set change made to false once it's like when it's submitted. And then the disabled state can be based on whether a change has been made. And that should work fine for us. But that won't work because now it is the change has been made, but we changed it back to exactly what it was before. Okay, great. That was a bad idea. So another thing that we could do here is, what do you think? Yeah. No, hold on. Yeah, I guess I can see how synchronizing it could make sense in this case. There's just something that rubs me wrong when we're synchronizing state that I just don't think it's a good idea. But yeah, like every avenue I'm exploring in my brain right now is like that's basically the same thing, just different. It's like there's no real difference there. So I think that's probably reasonable. For some reason, I feel like maybe yeah, here's another thing that you could do. Wait, no. Yeah, I think state synchronization probably makes the most sense. So the challenge then is, okay, so if the I think I would need to see an actual use case or the actual scenario for I'm a user, I'm on this page, I have loaded this form, and so now we've got local state synchronized to our context state, and then the context value changed on me, and so I want to update everything that's on this form. I need to see what would cause that. I can imagine some scenarios, but it would be easier for me to show an example of what I would do or how I would synchronize that state if I saw that, because maybe I'd want to unmount and remount the entire form. And if you do that, then not synchronizing state works fine. But yeah, probably not. It's kind of hard. That one's a little harder to answer. So I'm going to leave it at that. Maybe if you can give me a more direct example or realistic example, I can give you more direction. But as of right now, I'm going to say try to avoid state synchronization when you can. But it's, yeah, I guess there are some cases where it makes sense. Okay, that's as much as I can do right now for that one. Sorry, maybe it wasn't totally as helpful as you wanted. Okay, great. Hi there, Mandy. Answered your question. I don't know if it's an anti-pattern, but I use it regularly with React. Oh, right. Yeah, I wonder if that would have worked. Mikhail, did you see this one? Did you try that? I don't know if that would have worked, but.
Oh no, I didn't try it. Maybe I can try that out.
Is it an anti-pattern? I've always wondered.
Yeah, so I have mixed feelings about this. So I don't think that it's technically an anti-pattern. I mean, like, this is a reasonable way. What this is going to do is it's going to trigger a full page refresh, which may or may not be what you want. If it is what you want, then this is fine. One thing that I don't like about this is this is using a setter, and I don't like setters and getters because when I'm setting a property value, I don't like side effects happening. I just want it to set the value. And when I'm getting a value, I don't want side effects happening. So I'm not a big fan of setters and getters, and this is using a setter. So what I prefer is you can say window.location.assign and do the same thing. And you're calling a function in that case. So I would expect some side effects to happen. So this is not an anti-pattern, but I prefer using the assign function instead. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for throwing that in there, Clark. Okay, Doug, you could put a reference on the input. Oh, right. Thank you for your help. Yeah, so I'm guessing we're talking about this here. So put a ref on the form and query its values. Yeah, so the problem is that you, because I'd actually considered this as well. Let me see if I can just pull this back up here really quick. So what Doug is suggesting is putting a ref on the form, and then you can query for the form's values and see whether any of those have changed. And then you potentially imperatively update the button value or the button is disabled. That would probably work. The challenge with that, if we go back, oh man, here, I'm gonna not save that. Does that work? No, it didn't, rats. Okay, well, the original from which, oh wait, I've got the original. It's just right here. Grab that. Okay, so the problem with that is that if the context value changed, then this is disabled value would actually not get updated based on the context value. Well, so it would only, you would only be able to respond to changes on the form. I guess you could do React use effects on the context value itself as well. And then you could imperatively set the button. But in any case, like if you don't want to do the imperative thing, which I don't recommend doing the imperative thing, then you're going to be controlling some state for whether or not we're disabled. And if you're controlling state, you're going to be setting state, which will trigger a re-render anyway. So you're not much better off than just synchronizing, and just make sure you you don't fall out of sync. Here's one of the problems with synchronizing state. Let's say that I'm typing in, filling out this form, and then context value changes. So what do I do with the changes that the user's made? Do I like delete all of their changes and update it to the context value, or do I say no, we're just going to be different? And like that's just a decision you have to make, but it's one of those things that you might not think of and ship that as a bug. That's synchronizing state just leads you to having to deal with these kinds of problems. That's why I tried to avoid it. So anyway, let's move on. Thanks for your input there, Doug. Question, it's kind of meta. What are some qualities you would seek when hiring a new JavaScript developer? So I did a lot of hiring when I was at PayPal, and that was fun. I enjoyed it. I didn't always hire for my team. I was just an interviewer, one of those 4 interviewers when people came on site. And the things that I typically was looking for, like our hiring process is just a joke. I hate the hiring process for software. What's interesting is that like, if you're a lawyer, then you take the bar exam, and then like everybody knows that you are a lawyer. And so like, from there, it's just like, do I like you? But for a software developer, you basically take the bar exam at every single company that you go to when you're interviewing. They have to make sure that you know what you're talking about, which is, I mean, I don't know how you would do that. Like, can we do a standardized exam for software engineers? I don't think so. But anyway, so when as an interviewer, I tried to focus more on do I feel like this person has shared values that our team that are important to the team that I'm hiring them for. Like shared values of collaboration, ability to accept feedback and give feedback. If I ever was the interviewer who is interviewing them specifically about React or about JavaScript, then I typically I would give them something to code up, but it would be like the most simple thing I could imagine. So for React, I said, just write me a counter component. It just renders a button. Every time I click the button, there's a number inside the button that increments. You'd be surprised how many people couldn't do that. And lots of them couldn't do that because they didn't have Redux. I didn't let them have Redux. And this is one of the reasons why I have such a disdain for Redux, is because I witnessed like a surprisingly number of React developers who couldn't function without it. And that bothers me a lot. So anyway, if as far as like the coding stuff, I would just look for, do they have a relatively good grasp on fundamentals? And then do they have shared values with the team? What can they, and in fact, lots of the interview, I would ask them, tell me, like, I wanted to turn the interview around and say, what do you want me to know about you? So like, show off to me some of your coolest things about yourself. Tell me about the coolest projects that you've ever done. Tell me why they were cool, that sort of thing. So anyway, that's kind of what I sort of look for. Hopefully that was sort of helpful. Okay, Tailwind CSS is awesome. Ben is asking, big fan of my work, junior developer, currently working on a financial web application that has a large number of data tables. Fun. We have a generic table component that we use throughout the application. However, some of the new requirements for the table are becoming more complex. Mind blown. That never happens, right? Oh, this is life of software engineers. Change is everything, is always changing. Do I recommend using a library for more complex data tables, like generic and dynamic tables, or create my own? What advice do I have on this? Thanks again. Da, 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 da. And I'm looking forward to Epic React also. So Ben, here's what I would do. So first off, I've never, nope, that's false. Yes, I did build tables like this at, I know I did it at Alianza when I was in AngularJS. I'm trying to remember if I've ever done this in React. I don't think so. And I did this at AppTask too. That was also AngularJS. So yeah, and that's years ago. But if I were like brought onto your team and you're like, hey, I'm not going to show you the code yet because I don't see your code and I don't know what your abstractions are like right now. But the first thing that I would look to is React table. This is a TanStack library, and so that means it's awesome. Yeah, Tanner Lindsley is just the bomb, and he makes awesome abstractions. So big fan of Tanner and what he's built. He's the author of React Query as well, which I'm a huge fan of. So what's cool about React Table is it's a headless UI library. When that means, this is kind of going back to what Mandy and I were talking about. The hard part about a table or most of these types of components is not the UI necessarily, but actually the brains behind how that UI functions. And so like, rendering, I think we can all pretty much agree that rendering a couple of divs and contents within those divs, that part's pretty easy, but making it so it's interactive and sortable and filterable and whatever else, that's the hard part. And that's what React Table solves for you. So it allows you to customize it 100% because it's just your UI. And then you can just offload all of the complex logic stuff to React Table. So that's why I would suggest looking into React Table rather than building your own thing. The other thing, if you decide that you want to go your own way, do it your own way, then just keep in mind the AHA programming principle, avoid hasty abstractions. And before you start working in abstractions into your current, or working in different use cases into your current abstraction, build it brand new for the use cases that you have. And you can just do this before you even make the pull request. But like, so you've got this one over here, just build a brand new version of the component that is custom tailored for this new use case that they've come up with. And then when you're all done and you're happy with both of them, then you look at the two of them and you see, oh, I see that these are basically the same, except like two props are different or whatever. Then that's a great situation where you merge them together and then you send a pull request for that. But if you look at them at the end and you say, oh, actually, I see there are a couple of pieces of these that are similar, so I'll make those custom hooks, but everything else is very different. So I'll leave those as they are. So the problem typically comes when we have the abstraction. We're like, well, I must add my new use case to this thing because the abstraction already exists. And so we add the use case, but we find out later that it would actually have been better to have two totally independent things that share different bits of code. And it's much easier to identify if that's the situation if you first build them as totally separate things. So yeah, and here's the blog post about that. Programming. I feel like actually Epic React has an art. I just wrote an article the other day about this as well. Yeah, avoid soul crushing components. So that might be helpful too. Yep, that is, yeah, I think that's all that I have to say about it. I will teach you how to build headless UI components in Epic React as well. So that's fun if that's something you're into. Yeah, good luck. I would recommend React Table if you can. It's great. Okay. This one would do, yeah, okay. Hi, come from an Angular 1. Me too. Background and think the way React, and to think the React way. Declarative components programming and debugging is very difficult. Can you suggest something? Okay. Yeah, see, I have the curse of knowledge now because it's been such a long time since I was in Angular 1 that I don't remember what was so challenging for me. I do remember being like state versus props. Like, I don't know the difference. And actually, I think I wrote a blog post about that. State, props. Yeah, React fundamentals, props versus state. I don't think, I have no reason to believe that this is what you're struggling with, but it was one thing I struggled with when I started. So yeah, there's that, if that's helpful to you at all. Yeah, let's see, what other, I mean, Epic React is going to get you there. So that's, yeah. Get Epic React. It'll get you there. Another thing that kind of could help you get the right frame of mind is the Beginner's Guide to React. This is an egghead thing. It is free. And if you watch this and then you get Epic React, you'll be like, oh, that's kind of familiar. That's because lots of this is in the first some of this is in the first 2 workshops of Epic React, except the difference is that Epic React is more than just videos. It's actually exercises and stuff that you work through. So you'll still be better off with Epic React, but this should give you a pretty good foundation on the way to think about React, especially these first couple of videos that help you see like what React's responsibility is and how JSX works and that sort of thing. So a lot of people, even people who've been using React longer than I have, told me that they learned stuff from this. So something useful, hopefully. Okay, cool. Components that have to render something related with time, for example. Yeah. So I'm not sure if this is in the form of a question. But one of the things I like about React is that you often don't have to think about time, because it's just, you have some state and you render the thing that you want to render to the UI based on that state, and you perform the side effects you want to perform based on changes to that state. And outside of that, there's not really time. But yeah, building a timer or countdown component, yeah, here's something that might be useful. Dan Abramoff has a blog post over Reacted Yeah, so he has a set interval, declarative form of set interval, which is kind of cool. So you can take a look at that. Maybe that'll be helpful. Okay, cool. So I just got a couple of people chatting it up really quick. And I've got 5 minutes left. Does anybody else have questions as we reach the end of our time together? I know I had a couple recent AMA questions that I could go into. No, I thought there was some. Oh, I think they may have closed the issue.
I
Yeah.
have one last question.
Yeah, sure.
If nobody's asking, for Epic React, it's going to be released on Monday, correct?
So that was my bad. It's released on Tuesday. I got too excited. I guess I don't know why I said Monday, but yes, it's
Okay.
Tuesday.
Very cool. I'm very much looking forward to it. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Mandy. And for anybody else who wants to, there is a remind me button that will add this to your Google Calendar, and it is correct. So Tuesday, 10 a.m. is when this goes live. That's my time zone. That's Mountain Daylight Time. So yeah, in the email today, I said Monday. And anytime I make any mistake in an email that I send to 30,000 people, I hear about that over and over. So don't feel bad, Mandy. But yeah, like I always know when I make a mistake in an email. It's funny. So anyway, fun stuff. Okay, I think we're gonna wrap it up here. Oh, actually, I think somebody Discorded a quick question. I'm sure there's a blog post about this, but I'm going through testing JavaScript. It's great, but I'm wondering about history around testing and what the best place to start is as far as implementing testing in an app that is currently being built. Do I test every function, every class that's applied? Yeah, Clark, I've got a couple blog posts for you actually. How to get, how to add testing to an existing project. I always forget what that's titled. But yeah, this pretty much answers your question right off the bat. But then also, should I write a test or fix a bug will be very relevant to what you're asking as well. Like, oh, and then this one as well. I should just write a book and say, read the book. Just put all these blog posts in a single book. The other one is what test, how to know what to test. There we go. So those 3 blog posts together will give you a rock solid start on testing. All right.
Thank you.
Sure thing, Clark. I'd like to know if there is a good way to introduce error boundaries with React hooks. Yeah, I'll show you. It is React error boundary. Bum-ba-da-dum. Use this package and you will be happy. It will be easy, easy peasy, lemon squeezy, as my kids would say. So yeah, you have an error fallback. You pass that error fallback, and then you render your stuff. So you don't have to worry about writing a class component. It's great. So it's actually technically impossible to write a function component that is an error boundary because you don't have access to the lifecycle methods that you need, which is a real bummer. But because React error boundary exists and it's probably it has all of the features that you would need from an error boundary, you have no reason to write your own. Just use that one. Okay. Oh, and actually, there was a cool blog post. I don't know. Did I don't think I linked to the blog post. I really should. This isn't one of my packages. I took it over from Brian, but oh yeah, I think I did link to the blog post. So here it is. I'll give that link here as well. It's great. So enjoy. Okay, good times. Thanks everybody for hanging out. I'll just close up with the last couple of things. So don't forget Epic React. If you haven't already given me your name and email address, come down here to the very bottom, give that to me, and I will let you know when this becomes available. And you'll also get emails with awesome articles that you can find on here. If you missed it, I have a podcast, 9 episodes of me just talking to Michael Chan, and it's a blast. Some people have already listened to them all and said that they're great. So I listen to them all because I am weird like that, and I don't mind listening to my own voice. I enjoy it. It's kind of fun because when I'm listening to other podcasts, if I disagree or if I want to make an additional point, then I'm like frustrated because I can't like participate in the conversation. But when I listen to my own podcast and I'm like, oh, I want to make this other point, and then I make it in the podcast, and I'm like, oh, sweet. So it's kind of fun to actually listen to my own podcast. But anyway, it's great. Take a look at that. We still have some additional surprises coming to you for on Epic React. Stuff that I'm not even showing in the logged in version here. Aha, so look forward to that. It's gonna be good. Okay, cool. And then the next office hours is on Monday. So if you didn't get your question answered today, then feel free to ask it on Monday. And I do have live streams. I'll have a live stream after office hours on Monday. It is, or sorry, no, tomorrow is Friday. So tomorrow I'll have a live stream. That's the tour of Epic React Dev. That's where I'll actually show you what all this stuff looks like, and it's gonna be awesome. And then on Monday, then we'll have another Q&A, and then it'll go live the next day. And I can't believe it, it's happening. So good stuff. Thanks everybody for hanging out. We'll see you all hopefully tomorrow. Goodbye. And I always forget to do this, but I need to stop the live stream on YouTube first. Okay, bye YouTube.